Welcome to Tech Smarter. My name is Abbie Richie. I am the tech guru with the Smarter service. When you can find me here every Wednesday talking with people who are investors, innovators, and operators and shaping the future of aging services. This episode today is sponsored by Leading Age Arizona, and Tech Smarter is a production of the Smarter service. And if you happen to be a senior living operator and you're struggling to provide consistent professional tech support for your residents and staff, reach out to us and let us professionalize this experience for you. I'd like to go ahead and bring on my guest today. I have Sue Viox. Welcome to Tech Smarter, Sue.
Hi, Abby. You had it right the first time.
Okay. Trust my instincts, right?
Yes, trust them.
Thank you.
Thanks for
And
having me.
Sue, for those of those watching right now who are not familiar with you and what you do, would you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I am the executive director with a company called Linkage Connect. We do consumer market research exclusively for and on older adults, for companies outside of senior living as well as senior living themselves, to really bring the insights and just the broad, expansive lifestyles and life experiences of older adults to companies who want to learn more about them as consumers.
How did you land here in this space?
Oh, wow. So I actually began with our parent company, Linkage, 19 years ago. I hate to say that. My background before that was more marketing and sales. And when I came to Linkage, all of our companies focus on older adults in one capacity or another. And we kind of morphed into, once we started Linkage Ventures and started investing in companies that really wanted to cater to an older adult population, we knew that we had to start some research with these folks as well. So I just kind of morphed into this position. I'm passionate about older adults. I love what they have to offer, and I love the stories and the life experience that they have. So it was just a natural fit for me. And I became very comfortable spending all of my time sitting around tables, doing focus groups, doing surveys with older adults. So it's now my life career. I'll retire doing this, and hopefully someone will do it after I retire selfishly and ask my opinion when I'm 85. So.
You know, you really have a pulse on what's happening and what the residents want. And when we first started talking about what residents want, it became so clear to us right away that there are many myths that residents aren't interested in technology. And we have found the absolute opposite with the Smarter service and helping older adults with their tech. In your experience, what's the biggest misconception about what residents want, and how did you first see that myth challenged within communities?
Well, I think it's really, Abby, that they just don't want anything to do with technology. And, I think we have to understand older adults are no different than the rest of us, right? There are several of us who are very tech savvy people and several of us like myself who are not. So when we come across an older adult who says, I don't want anything to do with it, first of all, we have to ask the why. And the why usually has nothing to do with the fact that they're afraid of it. They don't want it in their life. It has to meet a need for them. So they are all over embracing new tech. And if we really think about it, unlike you or I, an 85-year-old has adopted and brought into their lives more technology than we ever will think about throughout their lives. So they're very open to it, but it has to meet a need for them, and it has to be simplified and understandable. And that's where the problem comes in, is everything's so complicated today. They want simplicity in their lives, and they want need versus a want. Is it necessary for me? And they always ask that question. And once that is articulated to them in a simple way, this is how it will enhance your lifestyle, they're all over it.
100%. Yeah, we at the Smarter Service, we found exactly the same thing. Perhaps initially their need is, can you fix this for me? But then secondary, they start asking questions about how this can be adapted into their passions and their hobbies and their overall connectivity. What I've also found from working with older adults is that they want to have a foundation, a basic knowledge foundation. on how it works, what the history is. They love their history,
Mhm.
and where is it headed in the future. And once you can lay that foundation for them, they're ready to take it on, because an older adult is a traditional learner. And when you just hand them the technology without the foundation, it's incomplete. So
Yes.
it's just,
And it's the why behind it, Abby, more than it's absolutely the why behind it. You know, those of us who are still in the workforce, who are raising children, or we're in different phases of our lives, we don't have time for the why, right? So we're fed so much information and we absorb it and then we extract it, and that's the end of it. Older adults have the time to do that. They dig deeper on websites than any other demographic. They spend more time learning the why. So to your point, with technology, that's no different. You know, why would I even want this in my life? Well, here's why. And let's show you how this works and how it can work to enhance your life in the future. So absolutely, I totally agree with what you just said.
yes, so it's the why. I'll be keeping that in mind. I like that. A lot of times in our busy everyday lives, it's the when, right?
Right.
It's
Or,
the when.
or now, let's just do it and move on. We're so task oriented in our different phases of our lives when we're younger. But once we're retired, and especially where they are in senior living, these folks are 78 to 86 in their prime in senior living. And you know what? They've got the time to say that. Let's take some time and learn about that. So, and it takes a certain personality to be able to step back. And sometimes our senior living folks who are on the staff there, they don't have the time for that, right? So they don't have the time to even explain the why. They just want to fix it and move on to the next fire they need to put out. Whereas what you guys are doing, you have the time to do that, and you've taken the time to sit with that resident and say, let's go through this and
Yes.
let's explain this to you. So
Absolutely. You know, I found early on working with older adults that I really had to shelf my agenda. So, you know, whatever the case was, I had to shelf it because they're on a different time frame, right? And
right.
there's a story behind everything
Mhm.
and some history behind it. So I learned that. I also learned that what you just mentioned, which was, you know, perhaps staff helping residents with their technology, it's often a matter of what I call the Titanic takeaway. It's like grabbing the device out of their hand, and actually some younger, some teenagers that sometimes the communities bring in, they just want to repair, fix it, and hand it back. So I call this the Titanic takeaway. It's like it's the grab out of the hand. I'll do that and I'll
I
hand it
love
back.
that.
But that is, that's not, that you're missing the teachable moment. And it's the
Right.
teachable moment that an older adult really gravitates to.
Absolutely. And we've seen that time and time again. I've done focus groups with folks just asking about what they're using devices for, and to see them around a table learning from one another. Oh, I didn't even know that existed. Tell me about that. Or how do you do that again? And it is amazing to watch all of that learning just happen. And they do. They want to give you the backstory as much as they want to hear your backstory. They want to give you theirs, and to take the time to be able to hear that. To me, that's the most enlightening part of my job. Is, you know, other people may not really care about their history or what they did. That to me speaks to where they want to be in the next 5 to 10 years of their lives, right? So we need to understand that too, as far as how this technology or this piece of information is going to fit into their lives as they age further. And then go to, especially with tech, let me tell you what this is going to be able to do for you in 5 years. You're not there yet, but let's talk about that as well. And I think we would find that there would be more adoption of other types of tech that focus on their healthcare later in their lives if they understood that piece earlier on.
Yeah,
So.
well, you have had success focusing on a few key technologies. What has been an essential piece of tech that residents are truly engaged with, and what problem have you found that it solves for them?
Well, what really surprises me the most is their mobile phones, their smartphones. You know, we just finished our study and we're now up to 86% of older adults, and our polls run higher in age. So our sweet spot in most of our respondents is between that 75 and 89 mark. You know, 86% own a smartphone, and the things that they're doing on them are remarkable to me. They're streaming, they're watching lots of YouTube videos. During COVID, they really got into the video conferencing, so they were Zooming with their families, they were watching their church services. Those are continuing on their smartphones when they could easily use, they're the largest population of tablet users, but they could easily use their tablets for a little bit larger screen, or even cast onto their televisions, which they're doing, but they still like that smartphone. And the reason why they like it, they're comfortable with the way it functions. So it is easier for them to, everything's set up on there and they're comfortable with that being in their hand, to just go straight to their church and hit the button to see their service. It's a habitual thing. They got used to it and they like it. And interestingly, it's 65 to 67% that own smartphones, they're iPhones. So they're very intuitive. And so once they get used to that device, them thinking like, oh, I could do this on my laptop, but oh, then I got to set up the login again, and then I have to go through this again. They're comfortable with that device. So I think we're going to continue to see it as long as they don't have really rich visual impairments or any types of tremors that would really, they would struggle on those devices. But they do more on their smartphones than I do on mine. I go to a bigger device, but they like those smartphones.
You know, I heard you say iPhone, and I want to echo that, because the iPhone tends to be it's more intuitive, like you mentioned. And I'll tell you a little secret. So when I was working with older adults doing our tech bar, for instance, and someone would come up to me with an Android device, okay? An Android device. And let's just say it wasn't one of the top brand names, okay? But let's say it was significantly less known. I would think to myself, and this is so your family must not love you if they give you this device, because like it's only going to give you a massive headache, and it's going to lead you back to the family member who gave it to you again and again and again, asking for support on it, because they are so unintuitive and glitchy.
Yes, absolutely. I've heard the same thing. And we've seen that really shift, Abbie. Like even in our study in 2021, just between 2021 and 2025, that gap has significantly closed. I think at that point, the ownership of an Android device versus like an ISO device was probably 6 or 7 points. And now it's a huge differential. So I think that it has to do with that. And I think it also has to do with compatibility with other devices, because they're huge tablet users. They all talk about their iPads as well. And they love the fact that those two talk to one another and they don't have to reinvent the wheel every time they get on a different device. So it's not a different login process. It's all of those things are just streamlined for them. And, you know, I just think they love them. They love the iPhones.
One of my frequently asked questions is, what should I get, Apple or Android? And I always say, go with what you know. And, you know, if you know how to use Android and you know that platform and it works well for you, stick with that. But if you're an Apple user, like this is the time to stay with that operating system. This is not a time to learn a whole brand new operating system. Your adaptability will be so much better if you go with what you know.
Right, absolutely. That's great advice to give them. I think that, and I think what frustrates them though is the amount of updating that these devices need, and sometimes replacement. I think they can get by longer just because they don't use a lot of the features and functionality that require the latest and greatest. But that's a very frustrating point. That's a point of contention for older adults. It's like, why in the world do I have to continue to update these? Where I don't know anything about the Android, but I do know that the iPhones kind of do that on their own. So that is kind of streamlined as well on the back end piece, where they update on their own and they don't have to worry so much about, oh, now I've got to do something different because it updated and now it's going to look different and feel different to me.
Yeah, you know, what we found at the Smarter Service is that the tech support calls go down when residents update. And it's a lack of update that create so many issues. It could be with scams. It could be with glitches. It could be with just basic, dysfunction that's occurring on your device because you haven't updated it. And it tends to be one of the number one quick fixes that you can do in order to extend the longevity of your device and keep you safer. So even if there's nothing that interests you in the description in the update, no more memojis or FaceTime with a community or something like that. But if there's nothing in that description that appeals to you, do it anyways, because there's always security patches in every update.
Yeah. And I think they're just frightened of that. And once they get used to that, after the first couple, when they realize that it didn't totally rock their world, then they're more confident in saying, okay, I'm just going to let this thing ride and we'll put it on autopilot and let it happen at midnight on the night of when it needs to happen. So I think that it's just, again, it's that education for them, knowing that it's okay, it's safe, and it's not going to completely change your device.
Are there any examples that you can share with us in which tech integration was easier and more successful than anyone anticipated?
But as far as on a campus or with individuals?
On a campus.
Well, I think with on a campus, I think most of those, again, are more like health driven, I believe. So when those are implemented, I think the pros and cons, I guess, the most important thing for implementing any type of new tech, I believe, on a campus is preparation ahead of time. The residents always want to know what's going on, whether it is something in the background that they may or may not ever see, or something right out there in front, whether it's a new POS system in the dining room, or whether it's a new way of managing communication, and that's a new platform for resident engagement. Whatever that happens to be, they need to understand, again, the why. Why are you doing this? Why can't we just put a piece of paper in the mailbox like we always have? And that all that does is just breed issues and complications. So from the leadership down, everyone needs to be on the same page, including the residents, and it needs to be communicated. And in my opinion, even to the point of education sessions ahead of time. This is the process we went through to choose this. This is why we chose it. This is when we're going to implement, and then also taking charge of the vendor. Because many times the vendors come in and say, I know how to implement. This is what we do. We do it. Well, hold on, because you do know that. And I'm expecting you to know that as a senior living provider bringing your service in. I know the residents. So I'm going to direct and drive that bus. And together we're going to do this so that our residents' needs are met, their questions are answered in advance. You get more buy-in across the board. You get buy-in from leadership down as far as the staff is concerned. Then you also get the resident and their family members, because a lot of those technologies also include the family member in one way or another. And the family member will be using it because they may be more tech savvy. They may say, oh, this is a substitute for me having to call the executive director all the time, so I'm going to get on the platform. Then they're pushing their parents. Why aren't you using this thing? It's great. The parents don't understand the value to them. So I think the preparation is more, it's kind of like painting, right? The preparation is more important than putting the paint on the wall, right? So preparing the residents for what's about to happen, why it's about to happen, and what you have done to make sure that we're minimizing any type of problems and making your experience as rich as possible, and articulating clearly who's in charge of this, who do the residents go to when there are issues, and then the data. I'm a researcher, I'm all about the data. So let's drive the data home. What was the usage of something like this before we even began? What was the process, and how engaged were the residents in it? Whether it was a piece of paper or whether it was another platform, we need to know our benchmarks. And then also measuring that during implementation and after. Why are people not using this feature? And you partner with your vendor to find that out. But that data can be so rich and teach you other things about your resident base that you can then make really great informative decisions about further investment or other investments in the future. So I'm all about communication.
Speaking in regards to the resident engagement platform, at the Smart Service, we found that only about 10% of the features are being utilized on engagement platforms, which is drastic. right?
Mhm.
And so what in your experience has been a way that you've been able to increase the usage of some of those features? Is it through education, through committees, or just having like an internal person who's able to really champion the technology?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Okay.
So I think the biggest thing with them is um, the misunderstanding of the why from the staff perspective is why are they not? They start making assumptions. Oh, I knew they probably wouldn't use that feature. Why?
Mm.
Are you sure about that? Like, maybe they would use it. Have you asked them? So I'm always all about going to the source. So go to the residents. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. We have this feature on here. We made a huge investment, and why are you not using it? Is there something? They're going to find things out. There are going to be bones buried. I think the second piece is committees are wonderful in senior living. We all know that. They offer so much rich information. The problem is these committees are made up of the same people, and very frequently the same type of people within the community. So they're usually the squeaky wheels who love to be very involved and very active in things. Well, those usually aren't the people who can bring you more rich information and insights. It's the people who don't speak up. It's the people who never come to you who are going to give you so much great information on the why behind why are they not utilizing, or why are they, like, what made them catch on to this piece that vendor told us they would never use, and look at our residents, they're using it. So if you're going to do a committee, get a committee of people that you've never seen before. Pull them out of their apartments, or talk to them at the dinner table, or whatever
Uh-huh.
you need to do to recruit them into the conversation, because they will bring a totally different perspective. So I just think that's very, very important. And I think your third point is key. You have to have people who understand clearly what that piece of technology does and the features that it has and how to use them. There's nothing worse than a resident going to the front desk with the new platform and 5 questions on their notebook, and that person can't answer them for them, or doesn't even know what feature they're talking about. Well, hold on, I don't really know. Let me just get back with you. That's not the answer they want to hear. And if you have someone, boots on the ground, that they can walk up to and approach, and that person can say side by side with them, let's take a look at that right now. Well, gotcha. And let's look that up for you. Now show me, what are you struggling with? Okay, let's try this. I think that's key. And you guys have seen that in your
Yeah,
business, right?
we have, yeah.
You see it every day, and you watch them come to life. So implementation or utilization will only improve if you have all 3 of those and use them properly.
Yes, we've seen that with our tech concierge on site at communities where residents are able to come up and ask questions about the platform, for instance, and the interaction and the features. And also, some of our tech concierge will do like a monthly enrichment workshop on the platform so that anyone could learn more about it and understand it on a deeper level.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's wonderful. But you got to understand too from your residents ahead of time. And I think we do resident satisfaction surveys and those types of things to check a box to say that we do them. Don't ask your residents a question that you're not going to do something with the
Mm.
answers. Don't waste their time. So that's where you can start asking questions. If you're going to invest in something, or you're thinking about it and it's in your strategy and in your budget for next year, start asking the questions about what that particular service or product does, and what the residents are doing to replace that today, and what they would like to see. Does that work for you? Why does that work for you? And then you can go back to the vendor and say, does your platform do this? Because right now my residents want this particular feature, and this is how they're doing it today. So how are we going to get them to do it this way tomorrow if we implement your product? So I think it's being armed with that information ahead of time from the residents themselves, that you can make better and more informative decisions on products and services you invest in for your community.
So let me ask you this, looking ahead, if you had a blank check to invest in one piece of new resident facing technology, what would it be?
robust Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Are none. I hear that time and time again. I was literally just looking at the many open, just free form comments that we get at the end of I always ask any survey I ever do with older adults at the end, I always say, is there anything else you'd like to tell me? Well, they open the floodgates and they're amazing commentary. But I hear time and time again, all this technology is great. But if I don't have a Wi-Fi connection that works, it's all a waste of time and money. So, and senior living struggles with that, as do, acute care hospitals do as well. The structures that these places are built are not conducive to Wi-Fi connection. So the amount of money and investment these communities have to make to enrich that and really make it robust. People are moving into senior living with, on average, 4 to 6 devices coming into their apartments or villas or townhomes. And because of that, if the Wi-Fi is not robust, they can't function in their lives. And then it gets even worse as we go through the continuum, just because of the buildings themselves. So that's key. And they love their own devices. So if you're going to invest in something, if they have the opportunity and you have the opportunity as a senior living provider to give them that product or service on their own devices via an app or an uploadable website, whatever that happens to be, think about that, because they're comfortable with their own devices and how they operate. And to park whatever it is you want to do on their own devices, there's likely a better chance they're going to use it. But again, you need the good Wi-Fi to do it.
You really do. And I found over and over that it's one of the things that so many of these buildings are missing, just because they were built at a different time for a different reason. And it's overlooked so frequently. And I think it actually ties back into, what this episode is about, which is not my residents. They don't need Wi-Fi,
Yeah, right. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think too, we have really seen in the last couple of years that the drastic change in that, right? And it's getting harder and harder. And they were forced during the pandemic, a lot of senior living, to say, oh no, we're in trouble. We've got 90% of our residents that we're only communicating with them via email or other means of electronic communication, mainly coming across Wi-Fi. They are only communicating with their family and their loved ones via Zoom or another platform needing Wi-Fi. We're getting more and more into streaming services versus cable or satellite services for the resident content provider. So you need Wi-Fi again. So it's a huge investment for them, and it's very, very difficult in many cases, but they're going to have to bite the bullet if they haven't already. And then they got to keep up with it. Technology changes. So, they need to make sure that they're keeping up with that. What is robust Wi-Fi today will likely not be robust Wi-Fi in 12 months from now. So they need to keep up with that, and their residents are going to demand it, and their family members of their residents absolutely will demand it.
100%. Well, Sue, I so appreciate you being here with us today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your expertise and your insight, which is so valuable. I find that there's many innovators that don't actually take the time to do the research and spend time with the people that they're inventing these products for. And so I just really want to applaud you for that and for having a heart to serve in this way. And if someone wanted to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
The best way is just to send me an email directly. I am perfectly available. It's scrolling across the screen there. It's sviox@linkageconnect.com. And I would love to speak with you about your research needs, about how you're engaging your residents today, and how we can maybe help you ask the questions that you need to ask to get the information you need to make informative decisions about any changes, any investments in technology for your residents.
Thank you so much. And
thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Love having the conversation with you, Sue. And for those who are watching us today, I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us. We're always open to hearing your comments and suggestions for new topics and episodes. And go ahead and connect with me on LinkedIn for more information. And we will meet you right back here next Wednesday for another episode of Tech Smarter. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.